All right, and hi, and welcome to Chapter 17, The Evasion, how to evade yourself, how to keep yourself anonymous. Okay, so before we begin, the reminder I'm going to ask you to copy a few notes and submit them as homework, of course. All right? All right, here's the first sentence I want you to write. Probably know this already. What is an IDS? An IDS, which is an intrusion detection system, is a sniffer with rules to detect attacks. So let's write that down. All right. IDS methods of detections can include signature based, anomaly based, and protocol detections, right? We've gone over this with the CCNA security course, so that's always good to review. The weakness of an IDS system is that it detects the attacks after the attacks has penetrated the network. Um, but an IDS system does not hinder the traffic. If you remember, we got to create, port mirrors on the switch, and so all the data that's coming into the switch, a copy of all the data, all the frames that are coming into the switch, will be handed off to the mirrored port. That's where the IDS system will be analyzing all the data. And then again, the problem is after the attack is in the network, the IDS will send out an alert to the firewall to block the data. But that could be a problem because the attack is already in the network. Now, on the other hand, an IPS system, here, write that down. An IPS system, which stands for an intrusion detection system, is placed in line to the traffic, to the incoming traffic. Um, so although it slows the connection performance, it is really designed to detect and stop the attack before it enters the network. So that is definitely the preferred appliance or the preferred way of blocking denial of service attacks mainly. All right. What are some indicators that of an attack happening? So some indicators on the host include unknown. Let me see here. Unknown files altered. So write this down. Here are some indicators of an attack that on a host. So if you've seen number one, unknown files that you did not see before, altered files attributes, um, or alteration of files, unknown file extensions. So if you get something .exe, .something while, exe.exe, cryptic file names, double extensions such as .exe.exe, for examples. Um, Indicators of an attack on a network, write this down as well. You have number one, increased bandwidth usage, connection requests from unknown IPs. Another one would be repeated login attempts, unexplained messages in the log file, or missing logs, or um, or logs with incorrect permissions or ownership. Um, Again, system crashes or reboots, gaps in the system accounting, unfamiliar processes. I know you're right. Please write all of that down because you need to know and be able to recognize that you are under attack. What else? Use of unknown logins, login during non-working hours, presence of new user accounts. All of a sudden, we'll be able to do that. By the way, we'll be able to remotely access a device, attack it, hack into it, and create a user, maybe called help desk, for example. Gaps in the system, audit files, decrease in system performance. Like I said, unexplained system reboots and crashes. All right, so let's get into firewall. Firewall configuration should be based on the company's security policy, and it's always dynamic, of course. It should be looked at periodically. So don't just configure a firewall and think, okay, that's it, I'm done. It constantly changes depending on the environment and the different types of attacks. And that's probably, one thing that you should definitely think of is creating a honeypot somewhere to find out what kind of attacks and then that are being exploiting into your getting into your network, and then you can set up your firewalls and IPSs to defend against these types of attacks. All right, the types of firewalls that are types of firewall filterings. There are three of them that I want you to write down, and there you go, down here. Number one, circuit level. So please write those three different types of firewall filtering. The circuit level, which works at the session layer of the OSI model to block or tear down the connections if it needed. Number two, there's the application level firewall, which analyzes the application data. And there is the stateful firewall. It uses the network transport and session layer to keep track of the connection if it is permitted. What else? Okay, so those are the three different types of firewall filtering. Firewalking. What is firewalking? So here's something that you should know. That's definitely a terminology that you should be familiar with. So please write this down as well. Firewalking is the excuse me, is the process of probing a firewall excuse me, to determine the configuration of ACLs by sending TCP and UDP packets at the firewall. So they keep sending you to figure out what the firewall configuration is. Is he blocking me? Is he not blocking me? And so on. So you can figure out how the firewall is configured, and maybe you can set up an attack with that. In practice, once an attacker finds open ports on a firewall, they could now focus on those ports and configure their tools to get into the system through them. All right, so by doing a little bit of firewalking, you can gather a lot of information. You may use Nmap to perform firewalking, right, and scan for open ports. A honeypot can be a dedicated server, by the way, or a virtual server or a single file. Just make sure when you're creating a honeypot that honeypot is placed outside your LAN in a DMZ zone, in a DMZ, right? You always design your LAN with a DMZ. Web servers, email servers, or any public needed access servers should be placed in a DMZ, right? You may attack the IPS or IDS itself, or so you can get around it. So if you see that there's an IPS system set up, you can attack it, bring it down, and then launch another attack to get around the IPS system and the firewalls. All right, so that's why you probably want to set up most of your authentications or any public service that needs to be accessed in the DMZ. If you know what the IDS system accepts as legitimate data, then you can use insertion attack to bypass it. Excuse me, that's what the insertion attack is. Use an obfuscator to make the IDS cannot comprehend the data, but the target can. So there are obfuscators, obfuscating technique. They'll be able to do that. There's the crying wolf, is another attack that can target an IDS with an actual attack, causing it to react. So you do that a few times. It keeps reacting to the activity and alert the system owner. You just keep doing that purposely, knowing that you're going to get caught. So if done repeatedly, the owner of the system will see the log file full of information that says, oh, the attack is happening, but no other evidence suggests the same. So you'll just ignore it, and then you'll do a one nice attack to get around it, right? Evading firewalls. So you may use the IP spoofing address routing, use Nmap to open port. You can use the Nmap to find, to scan for open ports. So those are the two things to evade firewalls. Use IP address spoofing. Please write that down. Evading firewalls, number one, you may use IP address spoofing and source routing. And number 2, use Nmap to scan for open ports, right? There's fragmentation, of course, and everything else. All right, so here's, this is important, to pen test a firewall. I want you to write all of these down. Number 1, footprint the target. Number 2, perform scanning. Number 3, perform banner grabbing against open ports. Number 4, attempt firewalking. Number 5, disable trusted hosts. 6, perform IP address spoofing. Number 7, perform source routing. Number 8, substitute an IP address for a URL. You can do all of that easily, by the way. Number 9, perform fragmentation attack. Number 10, use anonymizer. Number 11, make use of proxy server to bypass a firewall. And number 12, use ICMP tunneling. And of course, number 13, use an acknowledgement tunneling. All of this can easily be done. All right, so that's for the firewall. Now, what about to pen test a firewall or an IDS or an IPS system? So I want you to write the following 8 points. Number 1, disable, you should be able to do disabling trusted hosts. Number 2, attempt an insertion attack. Number 3, implement evasion techniques. Number 4, perform a denial of service attack. That can easily be done too. Use code. Number 5, use code obfuscation. Number 6, perform a false positive generation technique. Get a false by attacking a DS. Make sure, this is the, have the IPS send you an alert when it's not supposed to. Number 7, attempt a Unicode attack. And number 8, perform a fragmentation attack. All right, so you can do any of those. I know we're having, we don't, unless you could do these really with hands-on, and we're probably going to do maybe 1 or 2 of these in the lab, not specifically targeted to an IDS or a firewall, but you can, visit all of these different utilities that are enable you to do any of these type of attacks to a firewall or an IDS or an IPS system. But you got to have an IPS and an IDS and a firewall available for you to attack. If you visit thevonhub.com that I gave you a few weeks ago, there's probably firewalls, IPSs that are vulnerable that you can practice on. Download them and install them in VirtualBox and see what you can do. But of course, you do that on your own. I'm not requiring you to do any of that other than the hands-on lab that we'll do together. All right. So again, write the notes that I gave you and submit them on homework, and I'll see you on the next chapter.